Welcome back for Hunter x Hunter Chapter 415 talk. There's a slumber party kicking off in room 1001 and everyone's invited. But only a couple princes have RSVP'd so far, and that could mean a lot of leftover ice cream cake going right back in Benjamin's freezer. You hate to see that. This week we'll be covering a bunch of stuff, but you can just read the outline, right? It's on the screen. I'm just gonna start. So we begin the chapter with Furikov trying to figure out how Beyond's curses work and what result he's trying to get out of the succession war. That's relatable, I don't know those things either. But as Bill told us last week, Beyond is the type to talk freely about his plan because success is guaranteed and there's nothing you can do about it. Sounds like someone else we know. That means we should pay close attention to what Beyond tells Furikov, because even if there are a few lies, there's probably a lot more truth mixed in. And what Beyond says is that it's a killing curse that targets a specifically chosen prince, and that will activate upon Furikov's death. There is nothing here about Beyond remotely activating the curse to kill Furikov as Queen Unma supposedly threatened, and there's nothing here about the curse rebounding to Furikov in the event of his target dying first. In fact, Beyond says the curse is basically harmless to Furikov until he goes and dies on his own, which, if true, flatly contradicts both of those ideas. If Beyond is telling the truth here, he cannot threaten Furikov's life to make him do something, and he cannot control the timing of the curse going off, because it just depends on when Furikov happens to die. Unless he's got another curse baby aimed at Furikov, and that one's on a timer or something, so that one kills Furikov, and then Furikov dying kills the prince. And by extension, there's this whole other set of secondary curse babies aimed at the primary set of curse babies. That's probably not the case. We don't have to make this more convoluted than it already is, okay? And the fact that Beyond isn't controlling the timing is a restriction, so it's probably making the curse stronger anyway. Now, maybe this thing about the curse being harmless until death is a lie. But I'm inclined to think it's not a lie, because it fits perfectly with Beyond's claim, rated mostly true by our resident fact-checker, that he's not going to do anything during the trip to the new continent. If the curse babies are completely automatic, he doesn't have to do anything. He can just trust that enough of them will die at some point to take out some key princes and swing the war in his child's favor. On the other hand, none of this fits at all with the story that Furikov told Benjamin, which prominently featured the remote activation and curse rebound ideas. So what was Furikov up to in chapter 413? Did Unma even say any of that stuff, or was it all made up? Well, 2 weeks ago I suggested that Furikov was lying, because he's not really loyal to Benjamin and he's manipulating him. Now I think maybe I was 1 for 2. He's definitely withholding information, or he would have explained everything up front and gotten consent before hitting Ben with the TSK-17. And he does seem to be fudging some details about the curse to try and make himself look blameless so that Ben doesn't punch his head off. But it's possible that he's lying and manipulating ultimately out of loyalty to Ben, because he thinks he'll get better results this way than he would by telling the truth. This outburst to Beyond about how Ben serves the greater good of Kakin seems sincere. Ben is not in the room to be flattered, there's no advantage in pretending to be loyal to fool Beyond somehow. It seems like he's just loyal, and he truly believes that Kakin would prosper under Ben as a strongman dictator. Or under Ben's progeny with Ben as some kind of eternal guardian deity, as the case may be. So, okay, I'm convinced Furikov is loyal to Benjamin. And yet, that arrow already flying towards Benjamin that Halkenburg thought about in 413 has gotta be this plot to poison Ben with the TSK-17, which means Queen Unma really did give that order to Furikov after conspiring with Hulk over the phone. If Unma wasn't involved, it makes no sense for Hulk to know about it in advance. So that means loyal Furikov did poison Ben, but only after being ordered to do it by disloyal Queen Unma. And that makes it a lot harder to understand his reasoning if you ask me. Like, if he thinks it's so important for Ben to win the war quickly and then die a natural death, so he doesn't get cursed, why not communicate that to Ben sometime before Unma hands him the poison? Maybe Ben wouldn't believe him, but Balsamico would have at least heard him out, right? And what if Unma had never come along with the TSK-17? Was loyal Furikov just going to continue doing nothing and sit on this important information forever? It's weird, right? Now, maybe we can patch this up by saying Furikov didn't act earlier because he didn't have enough information yet. He might have taken 10 whole days to decode the ability of Ben's spirit beast, and until that was done, he'd never have the idea to kill Ben for his own sake because becoming a god wasn't yet on the table. So maybe he finally figured that part out and realized it was in Ben's interest to die soon, but he wasn't sure how to sell him on the idea, so he still didn't speak up. Then, the next day, Unma drops the poison in his lap, and the whole plan just comes together. A very happy coincidence. But even if that is what happened, and loyal Furikov always had Ben's best interests at heart, I think he made a pretty big mistake not opening up about the curse situation earlier, so they could brainstorm about it as a team. If Ben is a future king worth dying for, you should be able to trust him to make good decisions with the info you give him, right? And in this case, maybe a brainstorming session would have caught a big problem with Furikov's plan, namely that Furikov doesn't know the identities or targets of Beyond's other curse babies. It's not clear if he realizes that there are other curse babies. So during the whole war so far, but especially during SML, whenever Ben's soldiers kill some other prince's personal guards, they have a chance of activating a hidden Beyond curse that kills Ben immediately and ruins everything. Ben even ordered the execution of all non-hunter personal guards, so it's like he's begging for this to happen. I guess Furikov and Ben just aren't thinking that more curse babies are on the table, they think it's just Furikov, but Balsamico would have thought about it. And maybe they could have spent the last 2 weeks gathering intel on this very important point. So, not speaking up earlier, not coming up with a better plan to avoid accidentally killing Ben while executing random guards, just happening to wait for Unma's convenient order before taking any useful action, all of these things make Furikov a little fishier. If you think he's loyal to somebody else and doesn't want Ben to succeed, you can just point at all this and it's kinda convincing. But I personally put a lot of weight on this page where he yells at Beyond about the Tree of Kakin. Looking at this, my gut says Furikov's a true believer, and if he hasn't made all the right deductions and done all the right things, well, the succession war is tricky, and he's doing his best. Not everyone was built to consider every possibility in painstaking detail and think them all through to the end like our boy Karapika here. And I think that's all I have to say about what Furikov really wants. But we're not finished with this phone call yet, because there's also the question of what Beyond really wants. Here at the end of the call, just before Beyond interrupts himself for talking too much and hangs up, we have him admitting that he wants the succession war to finish successfully and for a new king to be crowned. So the war just timing out and letting multiple princes survive is no good to him. And Furikov guesses that a strong relationship with the new king might be important for Beyond's Dark Continent ambitions, since the new continent being settled by Kakin could serve him as a kind of long-term staging area for repeated expeditions. In theory, helping Ben win could make sense because Ben brings stability and order. Beyond even says he respects Ben for not taking part in Kakin's grotesque flesh festivals, so it sounds a little believable. But if we're trying to sort out fact from fiction and what Beyond's telling us, like Furikov is doing, this right here is the fiction. Beyond does not want Ben on the throne, no way. Longi has already pointed out that Ben was the favorite to win the war before factoring in the curse baby shenanigans. If Beyond is a Ben supporter, he never had to go to all this trouble in the first place. According to Longi, Beyond wants his own child to win, whom I believe to be Saridnik. And way back at the end of chapter 345, we have Beyond saying that there's 3 requirements left to reach the Dark Continent. Qualifications, the means, and a contract. My interpretation of this panel is that, from Beyond's perspective, Saridnik is the means, to the end of exploring the DC. So Saridnik winning has to give Beyond something special. Something better than the situation where Ben wins and just gives him a base on the new continent for long-term support. It's gonna be something way bigger than that. And it's not about having his son rule Kakin in order to put his bloodline in power, or to reform Kakin in some way. Those would both be ends unto themselves, but that's not how Beyond sees them. He sees them as a means. So, with respect to the DC expedition specifically, what does Beyond get out of putting a crown on Saridnik that he can't get any other way? To try and answer that question, I think it's useful to compare Beyond to the other guy who's been scheming over the succession war for the past 30 years, King Nasubi. These guys are both survivors, with Beyond having made it back from his first DC trip, and Nasubi having made it through the previous succession war to become king. They've both fathered a lot of children and a lot of different women, and they've done so with the rather cold-hearted purpose of sacrificing their lives to achieve a goal. That's obviously true with Beyond's curse babies, but it's just as true for Nasubi, because he had all these children so that they could all die in the succession war and power up the sole survivor. Completely ruthless. They're like 2 old chess players playing a decades-long game against each other, with all their children as pawns to be sacrificed. These 2 guys are such doubled characters and have such similar attitudes to each other that if Beyond has a plan for these 200,000 people on the boat who are meant to colonize the new continent, it's probably reflected in Nasubi's plan for them. And as it happens, we know that plan, and it's none other than human sacrifice. Nasubi sees the whole population of this colony as disposable. They're here to die in the war. Therefore, I have to guess Beyond sees the civilians on the Black Whale in much the same way. He thinks thousands of human sacrifices will help him on the Dark Continent somehow, and King Saridnik is how he accesses those sacrifices. This handily explains why King Benjamin isn't a viable option. Ben, respectably enough, was opposed to the carnivals and thus opposed to the wanton sacrifice of random civilians. That doesn't work for Beyond. King Ben would want to establish a strong colony on the new continent to strengthen the Tree of Kakin and expand the Kakin Empire. But King Saridnik wouldn't care about any of that stuff. He would be curious about what's on the DC, and he'd be perfectly willing to throw away the lives of his people in order to explore it. That's why the succession war is so important for Beyond. He doesn't just need a cooperative king, he needs a sociopath king who will feed his subjects into a meat grinder out of sheer curiosity. So, how would thousands of human sacrifices actually help the expedition? I've thought about that, and the obvious application is in scouting. Beyond wants to take a new and unexplored route, as Jing told us. So we can imagine him landing on the DC and sending 100 civilians this way, 100 this way, 100 that way. Rinse and repeat. If he's got an ally with some kind of surveillance ability to watch what happens to them all, so much the better. And if we want to get even more evil with it, there's a chance that Beyond still has another sample of that Zobai disease he brought back from his first trip. You know, this disease that makes you unable to die at the cost of your humanity? What if he plans to infect the civilians with Zobai and then use some kind of mass manipulation ability to march them forward into the DC? He would have unkillable scouts at his disposal. But honestly, if you have enough spare human lives that you're willing to waste, you don't even need the Zobai thing. If you think of all the terrors of the Dark Continent as landmines you're bound to trip on any which way you go, 200,000 civilians can step on a lot of landmines for you, and either clear a path or at least give you the intel you need on the threats ahead. As of now, that's my best guess about why Beyond needs Saridnik in particular to win the war. You may have noticed some holes in my story. For example, when he was scheming all this up 30 years ago, how did he know Saridnik would grow up to be a Patrick Bateman-style serial killer? Did he put a different curse on him as a baby, and it's the curse that makes you grow up to be evil? I don't know. But he might have assumed that a prince fathered by himself would have a pretty adventurous spirit, and he wouldn't feel especially loyal to the Kakin Empire, especially if he found out that Nasubi wasn't his real dad, and so he wasn't connected to the Huiguoro lineage. In any case, the fact that Saridnik has turned out the way he has is very useful to Beyond, and we should keep in mind that no matter how charming Beyond can seem, he's probably trying to make Saridnik a king because Saridnik will be okay with killing everyone. I mean, even if you don't believe me about this being the plan from the start, Beyond surely knows what Saridnik is all about now, and he's still probably trying to crown him. Any way you try to look at it, he is up to no good. Alright, so in summary, I think Beyond was basically telling the truth about how his curse works, he was definitely lying about which prince he's trying to support, and on Furakov's side, he hasn't been straight with Ben, but I think he's on his side anyway. The last thing I want to touch on in this part of the chapter is the final line about how Furakov wants to verify his target prince on his own. He doesn't have a year to spend hanging around Beyond to decode the curse with his ability, so I really have no idea what kind of verification is even possible. Was he planning to find another curse baby and kill them to see what happened? Like, what other kind of experiment could he do? What he ultimately wants to know is what'll happen when he dies, and he can't test that, so this is a question mark for me. Furakov is resolved to verify what he's been told, but I have no clue how he could ever do so. Maybe we'll get additional Furakov flashbacks and find out what he did. For now, I want to move on to the Halkenburg and Luzurus situation. Surprise, Luzurus pulled Rice aside for a private conference and both of them immediately went missing. Almost as if they've both been soul-swapped by Halkenburg's arrows and they wanted to get out of 1007 before fake Luzurus gave himself away, more than he already did. So if you're a returning viewer, you already know my views on this. I've been saying it since the chapter 413 video. I think Luzurus was the target of the arrow in that chapter. He acted very unnaturally after waking up on the couch in 414, and then vanished with Rice, who I also suspected of being soul-swapped. So, assuming I'm right, let's go over some possibilities here for fake Luzurus and fake Rice, and specifically what's become of them. Option 1 is my original suggestion, echoed here by Satobi, that they headed for the lower tiers by means of the Char boss Broccoli's room. I still think this makes sense, but it's a little surprising they were able to sneak past Yushihi and Chiamashi, who are hanging out just next door outside 1009. And actually talking to Broccoli could be problematic for a Halkenburg supporter who doesn't know him. Maybe they could act flustered about martial law and get away with seeming a little bit off, but it's a dangerous game to play. What if these mafia types have a secret handshake or something? For option 2, let's say they sneak out into the hallway, same as option 1, but instead of going to Broccoli's room, they head for some different passage to the lower tiers. Possibly a passage provided by Halkenburg's mother, Unma. We haven't heard about the high-ranking queens having access to secret passages of their own, but if any of them do, it's First Queen Unma. And in both of these cases, whether it's Halkenburg himself in Luzurus' body or not, these two have escaped SML and gone to ground on the lower decks. Remember that Halkenburg would have to plan for the chance that he'll be the swapper, even if it doesn't end up happening? So his plan needed some way to guarantee the safety of whoever's controlling Luzurus. Now for option 3, let's get a little fancy with it. You know who's good at making people vanish suddenly from the room they're in? 11th Prince Fugetsu, the girl with the secret door. And we know that Kaiser, Melody, and the Kacho Beast have been scheming up a murder plot for Luzurus. So what if they simply pulled the trigger on that plot right after Halkenburg shot the guy? In that case, they've just kidnapped 2 Halkenburg supporters, or maybe even Halkenburg himself, and they're about to murder them unwittingly. Now this would be darkly funny in its own way, but I don't think that's what's actually happening here. For the simple reason that they apparently grabbed Rice too. The plan was just to grab Luzurus, and even that was a logistical problem because somebody's gotta carry the guy through the tunnel while Melody's playing her song. Kaiser volunteered for the job, but I don't think Kaiser could carry Luzurus and Rice at the same time. And they wouldn't do a second trip and go back for him because why on earth are they grabbing Rice in the first place? What's in it for them? Plus, in this scenario, it would just be a big coincidence that the kidnapping happened right after Luzurus pulled Rice aside, when that seemed like a calculated move. And that brings us to option 4. It wasn't a coincidence, and it was calculated, because Halkenburg is coordinating with Kaiser. And so whoever's inside Luzurus right now has planned to get the 2 of them out of room 1007 with Fugetsu's assistance. The timing was arranged in advance. They moved to a corner of a specific room and put headphones on or something to block Melody's music, and then they proceeded safely through the tunnel without Kaiser having to carry anybody, while the other guards in the room were entranced. Heck, while we're at it, we could say that Fugetsu's help explains the rumbling from 1009 and the subsequent escape of all but one person from that room. If there's a Halkenburg-Kaiser alliance, Fugetsu could have gotten them all out of there after the shot was fired. But is there a reason to believe Halkenburg and Kaiser are in cahoots? Absolutely there is. Just look back at chapter 403. Here, Kaiser meets with Halkenburg supporter Wario Bay, who's been instructed to open up to Kaiser and show him the symbol on his hand if Kaiser starts talking about Nen. Wario goes on to explain that Halkenburg's about to die, and then the scene cuts off. We don't know how much of the plan Wario shares with Kaiser, but the fact that he's even sharing this much implies that Halkenburg wants Kaiser as an ally. So he probably told him all about the soul swapping and requested some kind of truce or cooperation with the Justice Bureau. From this point on, Wario could be the point of contact for any amount of Halkenburg-Kaiser scheming. And I call it Halkenburg-Kaiser scheming and not Halkenburg-Fugetsu scheming because it's not clear how much Kaiser is telling his supposed allies. As I repeat every time he shows up, I don't trust Kaiser, and I think he's probably being manipulated. And in chapter 411, we have this rather ambiguous panel, well after the meeting with Wario, where Kaiser says Hulk will get a big funeral whether his death was self-inflicted or whether he was killed by Ben. At this point, Kaiser knows exactly how Halkenburg died, or rather, how his body died. So why is he putting it like that? Maybe he has shared all of his info with Melody and Kacho Beast, and he's just speaking hypothetically here, like, one way or the other, the result would be the same. But maybe he has not shared the intel from his meeting with Wario, and this is him playing dumb about Halkenburg's real situation. He can't enlist Fugetsu's support without Kacho Beast's help, so if he's playing dumb here, then that is off the table. We don't have enough to go on yet to say how far the Halkenburg-Kaiser alliance has gone, or whether it's been shared with Team Fugetsu. So I can't confidently predict that Fugetsu is tunneling all over the place to help out Halkenburg here in 415. But the Wario meeting does make it a distinct possibility, so that's something to look out for in the next few chapters, along with the real locations of Prince Halkenburg and Prince Luzurus, which are still unknown. Okay, I think that's enough said about 1007. I mean, we missed the Ridge Kanji fight, that's kinda funny, and it doesn't exactly bode well for any of Benjamin's other soldiers who try to fight the hunters in their rooms. I definitely wouldn't want to be the dude in 1013 with Bisky, who has already decided that they're not going anywhere. Maybe a final comment is that the guards remaining in 1007 have been put in a very awkward spot now, because when Conjidal doesn't check in, more guards are going to knock on the door and say, hand over Luzurus. And they don't have a Luzurus to hand over. So Basho and Ridge aren't out of the woods yet. They're going to have to convince the Ben boys that their prince really is gone, and they really don't know where to. But hey, Ben's soldiers are a pretty reasonable bunch. I'm sure they can reach an understanding without any more violence. And that brings us to our final main topic, Benjamin and Babimyna. In this chapter, Babimyna agrees to pass on the letters from Oito to the general store, declining to try and spot any coded messages or show them to Benjamin first. One of these we can assume has the code to initiate contact with Oito's sister, so that Kurapika can give her a heads up about Gon and Killua. It's worth noting that Kurapika thought about dispensing with these letters entirely and letting Gon and Killua do everything, which means I guess he's still got cell phone service or something and he can just text them. That's handy. Anyway, Babimyna is acting unusually cooperative for a member of Benjamin's private army, as is only typical for him, weirdly, and this chapter has given us one possible solution to the mystery of why he's such a nice guy. That solution is right here in the phone call with Beyond. He says, just so you know, I'm aware of Prince Benjamin's ability. Now how would Beyond know a thing like that, unless he's got a spy planted right in Ben's private army? Maybe Unmo would know, but I can't really think of why she would. It's a mistake to let anyone know who doesn't need to, and that narrows it down to the soldiers whose abilities he can actually inherit. For them, it's strategically important knowledge that their ability will be passed on after death, as illustrated by the case of Mus and his rear window. So, Beyond's got a spy among the guards, Babimyna is a guard who's acting fishy, sounds like he's our guy, right? Well, let's assume that's true. What does a Beyond spy get out of being so nice to Oito and Kurapika? I don't think it's for the sake of a Beyond baby, because Oito confirmed the real Wobble wasn't fathered by Beyond, and if the boy cousin in 1014 is Beyond's kid, I have to ask again what the point was. Did Beyond scheme for 30 years to rest his hopes for the war on the idea that a newborn baby would win? A newborn baby who isn't actually eligible for the war and who doesn't have a spirit beast? Okay, no, that's nonsense. So maybe this is the cursed baby targeting the real Wobble. But that doesn't make sense either. First of all, the cursed babies were activated when their target princes did the Saturn ceremony, so the panel from 358 was not the curse flipping on. Second of all, Kurapika has certainly inspected the baby's mouth for signs of a curse by now, and he'd have found it if it was there because it turned on over a month ago. And third of all, say he's just forgotten to use Gyo and inspect the mouth and this is a curse baby. A Beyond spy has no particular need to defend this curse baby because Beyond ultimately wants Wobble dead. Otherwise his own child can't win the war. So, if Babimyna is the Beyond spy who fed him info on the Benjamin baton, he's not acting in Beyond's interests, according to any logic I can see. Maybe, like Bill, he started off as a creature of Beyond, but he's changed his mind, and he has different objectives now. Or he was never the Beyond spy, and Beyond got his info some other way, and Babimyna's nice for a completely different reason. Hey, about that, remember a few videos ago when I nominated Beyond and Benjamin as two possible secret fathers for the boy cousin in 1014? Let's go back to that and explore the idea that the cousin is Ben's kid, and Babimyna, a loyal Ben supporter, is being nice in order to protect the heir to Ben's throne. Point 1 is that Benjamin does have an illegitimate heir, and he wants to legitimize them sometime before he dies so the kid can be the next king. A lot of readers, myself included, assume that this was the baby in Queen Unma's room. But if that's true, Benjamin's first order of business when he learned that Unma betrayed him should have been to break her door down and secure his heir. He obviously can't trust his child with an enemy who wants him dead. The fact that he's not breaking Unma's door down right now, and seems personally focused on killing Camilla and Serednik instead, seems to mean that his heir is already secure somewhere. Maybe he's safe and snug in 1014, under the watchful eye of Babimyna, and that's the special mission Ben entrusted Babimyna with when he was sent in to replace Vincent. It's an attractive theory because of conservation of characters, or conservation of babies in this instance. If we've got a missing baby in the story and another baby of somewhat unknown origin, the most elegant answer is that those two babies are one and the same. Why multiply babies unnecessarily, right? But there's a couple big problems with the idea. First of which being that room 1014 is a pretty awful place to stash your secret heir. Ben didn't know a thing about Kurapika before the Succession War began, so he had no reason to think a really competent guard would be watching the baby for him. And since the baby's not a contestant in the war, it could be directly attacked by any prince's spirit beast at any time. So if Ben's kid is on the boat at all, the best place to keep him would be on the lower tiers, as far from the action of the war as possible. And the second problem is that Babimyna was not the first guard assigned to 1014. That was Vincent. And Vincent showed no signs of wanting to protect the baby in the room. Even when Kurapika seems to attack Oito with his chain, and Vincent thinks, does that mean he'll cooperate with me? It never occurs to him to say, hey, wait, whatever you're doing, don't attack the baby. Which would be the first thing on his mind here if he were on a special mission to protect Ben's child. So even if you want to argue that Ben wants his kid on tier 1 with him, despite the increased danger, I think Vincent's behavior slams the door on the possibility that this is his son. Babimyna probably has no particular mission with respect to the child prince, and was simply given the assignment to find out more about Kurapika, which does not explain why he's been so consistently accommodating to him and Oito. So, we're back where we started, except now we not only don't know what's up with Babimyna, we also don't know who the baby in Queen Unma's room is. Maybe I'm speaking too soon. Maybe the next chapter will start with Ben breaking Unma's door down, right? Like, I haven't given him a lot of time. But if that's not his first move, then that's not his baby, which means it's somebody else's. Maybe she's hanging on to the real Prince Wobble for Nasubi? But this is just conservation of babies again. I don't think it really makes sense. If Nasubi's got the real Wobble on the Black Whale, I think it's more likely she's tucked away in his room, so we can hand her right back to Oito if she ever tries to resign from the war. And in the meantime, if Ben took my great advice and stashed his real child on the lower tiers, that means there's something else on his to-do list during SML. As if he hasn't already got enough to do, he's gotta grab that kid and keep him safe. But maybe the kid's back home in Kakin somewhere, and the plan is to make his succession legal without him being present at all. Okay, I've been shooting down a lot of ideas here. Let's say something positive. The idea that the curse on Wobble could be exorcised became much more plausible this week with this bit of dialogue from Beyond. If the curse baby's target is selected when the curse is applied, and the strength of the curse accumulates over time as the curse continually leeches aura away from them, then we can conclude that the curse baby targeting Wobble is also a baby, and that curse hasn't had time to get very powerful yet. It may be way too late for Longi and Furikov, but this curse baby could potentially be exorcised by someone like Umanma. Or, on the other side, the curse could be deflected before it kills Wobble. And there's hope for other relatively young princes like Mariam and maybe Fugetsu as well, which is great news for Bisky, Hanzo, and Melody. And finally, we're halfway through the batch of 10 chapters, let's just get in a quick recap on where all the princes are right now, and see how it matches up with Ben's status report from 410, when he said that there were just 4 princes left to go. From the youngest to the oldest, we have 14th Prince Wobble, probably not being counted as one of the 4 since Ben doesn't know if she's on the boat or not, or if she's even still officially in the war. But that's not a sure thing, since Kurapika thinks SML is a chance for Ben to scour the lower tiers looking for Wobble. 13th Prince Mariam, safe in his closed Nen space. Bisky will have absolutely no problem with this guy, so Mariam's gotta be one of the missing 4. 12th Prince Mimosa is dead. 11th Prince Fugetsu is apparently in the Justice Bureau, probably being counted as one of the 4. But she might also be using her secret door to assassinate Luzurus, or help out Halkenburg, or who knows what else. Her mother Seiko is shown here, insisting that nobody go into room 1011 after it's sealed off, so maybe Melody and Kaiser told her to insist upon this, because they plan to tunnel into 1011 and use it as a secret base or something. It's hard to say why else she would be so insistent upon it when Fugetsu's not even in there. 10th Prince Kacho is dead. 9th Prince Halkenburg, I'm pretty sure was just on tier 1 shooting Luzurus through the wall, and now he's either escaped 1009 by some unknown means, possibly Fugetsu, or he's in Luzurus' body, and in that case he's also just escaped by unknown means. If he's in Luzurus' body and he's headed to the lower decks via Broccoli's room, then he's probably on tier 5, since that's the Char family's territory. Again, it's unclear to me if he's considered one of the 4 missing princes. 8th Prince Sale Sale is dead. 7th Prince Luzurus, I believe, is in the body of either Balsamico or one of Halkenburg's supporters. That body is either restrained or unconscious. We don't know where it's been moved to, and we don't know if Halkenburg has made a deal to hand Luzurus over to Melody and Kacho, who want to kill him to save Fugetsu. He is definitely one of the 4 missing princes. 6th Prince Tyson is on her way to the slumber party in 1001. That's our first RSVP, and she seems to be bringing all her cute boys with her. 5th Prince Tubeba is also heading to the slumber party, but sadly is not bringing all her cute boys with her. I hope Tyson is willing to share with her big sister. 4th Prince Rudnik is in his room, practicing and ignoring SML completely. We can guess that in chapter 410, Ben thinks this guy is dead, so he's not one of the 4 missing. 3rd Prince Zhonglei has escaped to the lower tiers via Unyor's room, probably to tier 4 specifically since that's the Shiyu family's territory. He's definitely one of the 4 missing princes. 2nd Prince Camilla is getting a nice massage and ignoring SML like Cyrenik. Ben in 410 seems to think she's been taken care of, and he knows how to kill her, so there's a good chance she is dead. But don't forget about her spirit beast, that could always be a curveball somehow. Still, she is probably not considered one of the missing 4. And first Prince Benjamin is going to be dead this time tomorrow. However many chapters it takes us to get there. Not that I'm complaining about the pace. I think Ben's big day is going to be a big turning point in the war, a lot's going to happen, and that takes time to show. It's going to be a lot of chapters. I don't think this is the Succession War rocketing to its final conclusion, like some people are saying. Maybe when these 24 hours are over, we'll be at something like the halfway point, say. That would be more my guess. Of course, in terms of time on the voyage to the new continent, we're less than 2 weeks into an 8-week journey, so we might not even be that far along. Either way, if you're feeling restless, all I can tell you is to get comfortable, because this arc's not ending for another 100 chapters at least, and I will happily make another 100 videos as we go along. So, that's my little mid-batch recap, and that's all from me for this week. Everyone was very encouraging about me making the videos a little bit longer, and obviously I've taken that feedback to heart, but I also don't want to force it. Maybe my next video will be 40 minutes long, maybe it'll be 15 minutes, I'm just gonna follow my heart and hope that everything works out from there. You know, true love for the manga Hunter x Hunter by Yoshihiro Togashi will always prevail in the end, that's what I always say. Thank you, as always, for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think Babimyna is up to. I didn't really land anywhere on that, did I? I don't know what's going on. Maybe he is like Bill. Regardless, keep your fingers crossed for this guy to survive the slumber party, and I'll see you next time.